Welcome everyone to the second session of Big Banter, a Canadian youth-led conversation. So I'm hoping everyone's online now. We're gonna get started. So thanks everyone for joining us. This event is a National Youth Mentoring Advisory Council event supported by Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. For over 100 years, Big Brothers Big Sisters has been making a positive difference in the life of Canada's youth by developing and implementing a wide range of mentoring programs. Across Canada, Big Brothers Big Sisters agencies are numbering about 100 and supporting about 1,100 communities and serving more than 41,000 children and youth. The Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada Youth Council, called National Youth Mentoring Advisory Council, or NYMAC, is a consortium of young people from across the country who have knowledge and expertise in mentoring. This youth council is involved in initiatives such as our youth engagement strategy, a collaborative effort between the council members, Big Brothers Big Sisters staff, and external youth serving agencies, which aims to improve mentoring opportunities for mentored youth in Canada through youth involvement. So again, welcome to this, our second session in our series of digital dialogues with youth in Canada and members of parliament from each political party. We've invited politicians to engage with youth on topics relevant to youth, and this work has been led by NYMAC and supported by Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. I'd like to introduce our youth moderators for today, Sharon Makina and David Awashoga. Both are members of NYMAC. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, David lived in the United States before moving to Canada in 2009. He is currently studying applied statistics at the University of Lethbridge, where he also competes as a member of the Pronghorns track and field team. He has volunteered as a teen and in-school mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Lethbridge and District since 2015 and remains very active in his community, coaching track and field clinics and volunteering at church youth programs. David's love of sports has given him a tenacious work ethic, and he combines that with an encouraging personality to draw out the best from everyone he interacts with. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much.
Originally from Malawi, Sharon was born and raised in Zimbabwe and is a recent electronics engineering graduate. One of her major goals is to empower women to join the STEM industry and eventually take medical technologies back to her home country of Zimbabwe. She has always had a deeply rooted desire to serve her community and has a passion for people. In the past 3 years, she has been a Go Girls mentor, an ambassador, and most recently, a big sister with the Big Sisters of BC Lower Mainland. In addition to empowering women, Sharon has worked with different organizations to try and minimize homelessness in the downtown East Side, and is currently an advisor to the board of directors of Employ to Empower, a nonprofit organization which connects homeless individuals to meaningful work. Sharon is proud to be a part of the National Youth Mentoring Advisory Council and also hopes to inspire others to embrace their own voices and stand up and take their power back. Now I'd like to turn it over to David and Sharon.
Thank you for the lovely introductions. You had me blushing there. Thank you so much. So before we start, we're just going to have a few housekeeping notes. So please ask us questions. We love to talk and we want to hear what you have to say. No question is stupid, no question is silly. Make sure you're posting anything that comes up, put it in the Q&A so we can interact with you guys, because this is Big Banter. We're here to have a conversation with you guys and to make sure that everyone is heard and your questions are important to us. And secondly, tweet it out. We all know if it's not on Instagram, if it's not on Twitter, did it happen? So please tweet, TikTok, Instagram, MySpace. Just use the hashtag Youth in Office and we'll truly appreciate it. Thanks so much. I will pass it on to David.
Thank you, Sharon. So we have two panelists today. The first one being Matt Genereux, the Conservative MP for Edmonton Riverbend. We were fortunate enough to have him participate in a similar panel that we held in 2019 for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada's annual Hill Day. Prior to joining federal politics, MP Genereux was elected to the Alberta legislature, where he advocated for compassionate care leave as well as childcare policy. During his time, he chaired the Youth Secretariat and served as chair of the Government of Alberta's Youth Advisory Panel. Since being elected to Parliament, he served in roles such as the Shadow Minister for Health, Infrastructure, and Innovation, and he organizes an annual mental health advocacy event on Parliament Hill.
And next, we have Jenica Atkin, the Green Party MP for Fredericton, and the first member of parliament of the Green Party to be elected outside British Columbia. Before being elected to parliament, she worked as a researcher and a program coordinator in First Nations education. She was heavily involved in student politics growing up, and now she's on the Hill and she's been advocating for issues around Indigenous rights and the environment, healthcare, and the LGBT community and mental health. Now with that, we'd love to pass it on to our panelists to give their opening remarks. Not to put you on the spot, Matt, but after you.
Because I did this before, right? That's why I'm first. No, it's a pleasure to see everybody. Pleasure to be here with not only my colleague but my friend Jenica as well. I think it's fun to do these panels because you always learn a little bit more about your colleagues in the same way. So looking forward to hearing some of her responses. But I remember joining everybody in person at the Rito Club. It feels like a long time ago, but I guess it was only about a year ago where we were able to gather together. And certainly it was before the election. We were talking a lot about what it means to run an election. But it's I'm happy to be back and happy to continue to support all the great work of I see so many friends in the chat here, but the Big Brothers and Big Sisters Canada. So looking forward to the conversation.
Great, and hi everyone, and again, thank you so much for the invitation. And I said it when I first joined, that these are my favorite events to attend and take part in. I think it's so important and so inspiring to hear from youth, and the questions that were asked always are just incredible and so insightful, and it just really highlights the important direction that we need to be heading as parliamentarians and ensuring that we use the youth voice and bring that with us into our work. So this is always a joy, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation and to getting to know our moderators as well a little bit better, and of course my friend and colleague Matt as well. So yeah, this is great. Thank you everyone for joining us as well, and please don't be shy, ask your questions. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jenica. So the first question I have will be for both panelists, and I just want to know a brief outline of your journey into politics. And what was the one thing that made you take that next step, that gave you the motivation to be like, if you were ever unsure about, is this the right path for me? What was the one thing that made you think, yes, I'm in the right place?
Does it matter who goes first? Maybe I'll go first. Just my microphone was already on. So for me, it was a bit in my bio there. It talked about youth politics. So I certainly always wanted to be involved in kind of the decision making process, for the people that I cared about. So I always was, volunteering or finding ways to be involved. I was my grad class president, and I had plans, to pursue politics at some point. That was something I was always very interested in. I remember studying history, learning about, the prime ministers that came before. Always people who are usually from a law background. So my plan was to go into law and then eventually to go into politics. And as life, often does, it takes us down a road we don't necessarily expect, but it turns out to be the right road nonetheless. And my journey took me to education. So I was able to work in the education field for 10 years. I was a high school, middle school teacher, working mostly for Indigenous communities in public schools. So advocating for curriculum changes, Indigenous representation, respect for Indigenous knowledge. And it was just an incredible career path for me and very validating. But what I found was happening is that there were so many barriers that I was noticing, so many issues that within the school that were preventing students from being able to be heard and acknowledged and respected the way that they really deserved. And so I was very inspired from the youth activism that was around me. And but really what changed everything was becoming a mom. So when I had my first son, I really, started to think more seriously about, what kind of future I wanted to hand him, and, being able to look him in the eye and know that I did everything that I could to ensure, a future that had a sustainable environment as an example. And because my children are Indigenous, also that they would be, feel welcomed and comfortable and represented in all of the institutions that are in our communities. And so then I had a second child, which only added fuel to that fire. And while I was on maternity leave, I actually decided to get involved in a provincial race. So I gave a call to my local riding association and said, how can I help? What can I do? And they said, well, we don't have a candidate. So that's what happened there. And I signed up, and I had my first experience in a provincial election was amazing. I got 479 votes or something like that. And then less than a year later, I got a call to be the federal candidate, and the rest is kind of history after that. So again, life takes you down roads you don't always expect, but somehow you kind of end up where you're supposed to be. So it's a non-traditional journey, but one that I'm very proud of for sure.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, now it's your turn, Matt, to attempt to live up to that.
Great. I have to be more impressive than Jenica. My goodness, that'll be impossible. No, it's I guess a similar path. I got involved in politics when I was maybe a little bit younger than Jenica. I got involved when I was 14. Worked on my first campaign. It was my parents grew up in a different political party, but for me it was out here in Western Canada, as you maybe can attest, David, that we certainly see a bit of back then it was called the Reform Movement, and I got involved. My first campaigns, think, you know what, Ottawa seems so far away from us here in Edmonton, so I wanted to be a part of that, and went and started working on a campaign to try to get the local candidate elected. Then since then, just kind of stayed involved, but similar to Jenica, it wasn't until I had my first daughter, Molly, who's now she's 13 years old now. But she back when she was first born, I started to realize a lot of the issues that were in and around my community became more and more prevalent to our lives. And for me, it was schools. For her, she had to go to a school that was on a 45-minute bus ride, and I thought sending my 4-year-old daughter on a bus for 45 minutes to a school and 45 minutes back from school with kids who are in grade 12, and it just became, it worried me a bit. So I went and I started talking to my local elected officials, my MLA at the time, and said, I think we can do better. I think we can build better schools. I think we can do things a little bit more efficient. And sure enough, he said, well, if you feel this passionate about it, you should think about running. So sure enough, I did. And when I first put my name on the ballot, I was 29 and got elected. By the time the election came around, I had a birthday. So I was 30 when I got elected to the provincial legislature. And since then have, I guess, remained involved around federally, and now represent the same area that we got those schools built for my daughter. And I've since had 2 more kids since then as well. So, and they certainly inspire you to continue to work. And I want them to get involved in organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters, because I think there's so much good that can come when so many youth get together and for a cause that's important. And that's what you guys are doing here today.
Oh, that's great. Taking notes, have kids. Got it. Okay, I guess.
If we can leave you with one thing, maybe that's not the thing to leave you with, but.
Oh, just wait and then have kids.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you for that, Matt. And yeah, no, that again, 2 very, very different paths, but both MPs representing their communities and doing what they can to support people. That's really great. I have a question from the Q&A, and it goes for both of you. And it says, has there ever been a moment of uncertainty where you thought about leaving politics? How did you overcome that? So I guess for Matt, as a second-term MP, you've seen things and you've had a steep learning curve that you've brought new lessons into. Has there any been moments of uncertainty for you? And for Jenica, as this is your first go-around, first rodeo, has there been anything that's been like, maybe not, and what pushed you through to overcome that?
Yeah, I'll start if that's okay, Jenica. Yeah, I think it's almost like I'd say it's almost daily, to be honest with you. There's, Jenica comes from she travels across the country. I travel across the country. I think that's probably the hardest part. It's been a little bit different now that we spent a lot of time like this talking to our colleagues on iPads. But there's certainly a lot of times where, you fight and you fight and you fight and you feel like you're making incremental progress, but at the end of the day, it's, you want to be able to move faster, to move things forward quicker. You come with a bunch of ideas, and you want to move those, but it really takes that collective teamwork of Parliament. So there's 336 other of us in Parliament that essentially have to work with and build those bridges with, to be able to move things forward. Even the Prime Minister has to build bridges to be able to move things forward. So I think all of us, there's certainly times and days that become more and more challenging. But I've lost an election before. I lost the provincial election and then ran again federally. And I thought to myself, I thought I was done at that point in time. But it's just that drive to continue to make the world a better place for kids, but also for future generations that we don't know. There's people on this call that I don't know, but I want to make the world a better place. I want to make Canada a better place for them. So that's the drive that keeps you going and keep fighting each and every day.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Matt. It's good to know that, again, you're still human. You're still real people that still have these doubts. Janica, the same question goes for you. Has there been anything, especially in this tumultuous first 14 months you've been on the job, how have you handled that?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest challenge was just getting involved initially. So after that federal or provincial experience, I had to be asked maybe 7 times to run again federally, because it's such a large riding. I was worried about if I would be able to be a voice for all of the people and all of the different communities that make up, my riding, which I think is the best riding in Canada. Sorry, Matt, but and it was for me, again, it was the reason for wanting to get involved was my children, but also my hesitation was because of my children. They're only 3 and 8. I had to be sure that I was making a good decision for them. They didn't choose this life, and the travel piece is really difficult. Fortunately, we kind of made it work. We adapt all the time. People ask me like, how's it going? Every day is a new day. Every day is a new challenge. So we kind of just take it day by day. I'm very fortunate to have the people around me that I do to help support me through it. But it's always concerns for my children. And there's tough days. There's days that becomes a little bit overwhelming. And I think was it the right choice? And ultimately I have that reassurance. I'm like, okay, you're doing good things, keep fighting, you got a good team, and you are making a difference, even if it is those kind of small incremental things that Matt mentioned as well. We want things to go a lot faster. So sometimes it's just about navigating to this new world and understanding how things works and which levers of kind of influence or power I might have to make the changes that I really want to see. So and the people make it better. So anytime I feel that way, I try to connect with someone or have a conversation with someone, and I always come out of it feeling much better and much more secure, that I do belong. So I've had that imposter syndrome before too, where I thought, wow, looking around in that room, I remember the first time being in the chamber and just thinking, oh my gosh, like I don't think I belong here. Like, this is wild. These are like celebrities that I see on my television, or I'm one of those people that watch CPAC regularly even before I was elected. So but you know what? I fought to be there, and I represent the people of my community that I care so much about. So that is what makes you belong. And so if that's your drive and why you join politics, and you are there for the right reason. So even on those bad days, which do happen, I just try to remind myself of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess a follow-up on that, there's actually a question in the chat for you specifically, Janica. And the question is, do you feel unwanted, or you find it hard to work? You have to find it to work twice as hard as a woman in politics?
Sometimes there are certain spaces, there have been meetings, where I just don't necessarily feel that respect, and it could be because I'm quite young too. I've heard I look younger than I am, so which is a good thing. But at times you have to like kind of prove yourself. I have credentials, I have a background, I have experience, I have something to offer. So there have been times when I had to kind of go that extra mile to make sure someone realized that, to take me seriously. And just again the extra barrier, I would say, of having those responsibilities, of a mom, and all the things that we do in our home lives as well. So it's always that balance, but I give it my all, and I think being confident is part of that, and I just try to push through and remind people that, again, I do have something to say, and there is a reason that I'm here. So I respect, I guess, is something that sometimes I have to fight a little harder for. But I'm so proud to be part of this 42nd Parliament with 100 women. That's incredible. We're really making a difference. I find it, I think that's it brings me so much hope and optimism that, I might have been the first woman from Fredericton, but I won't be the last. I'll have to steal Kamala Harris's line on that one, because I just so inspired by that. We open the door so that other people have it open for them behind us.
Excellent.
Thank you for that, Jenica. I have a question from the Q&A for both MPs, and I will frame it. You both mentioned about how your children have been a big factor. What is it like balancing your family responsibilities with your work responsibilities? And like, has COVID been some sort of blessing in disguise that you get to be home more often than you would have in a normal term? I know that Matt can speak to this as someone who's lived in Ottawa for the extended periods of time. But so the question is two-sided, or how do you balance the work and family balance? And then what things can you do personally about your self-care or to stimulate your mental health?
Yeah, it's I actually get asked that question a lot about has COVID been able to allow you to be with your daughters and now my son. So full disclosure, we have a 10-month-old son. The pandemic, what I guess officially we call it 8 months ago. So he's known nothing else other than seeing people in masks, and he sees very few people. He doesn't even know people who are part of this this world that we live in. My wife is also a very busy career. She's a frontline worker. She's a physician at our hospital here. So she's been working incredibly busy and incredibly hard. And it's actually has been a blessing that I don't have to go to Ottawa all the time. But it's also been a little bit a learning experience with me and our little guy, Hugh. He often at the beginning where he wasn't crawling around much, I could do calls like this and he'd be lying on my lap, and we'd be fine talking to ministers in the government. I was also our health critic at the time, so it became incredibly intense very fast. And then thankfully have been able to take a bit of a step back here in the last I guess maybe couple months, and have been able to focus a lot on him, but also making time for the work. So it's being able to have that balance. It's when I first got elected, Molly and Lily were 3 and 4, and now they're 13 and 11. So they've also only really known to go to the grocery store with Dad being stopped at the produce aisle and wanting to talk about a particular issue of the day. So they're a little bit used to it now, but I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see when we're standing up there in CPAC and in Parliament. The Prime Minister has young kids too. It's being able to find that time to spend with your loved ones. You really have to almost schedule it in, and your staff become de facto parts of the family to be able to work that in with you. So I wouldn't say I have it figured out by any means. I've been doing it now for about 9 years, but still it's every day is because you want to spend time with your kids. It's just finding that time that works for everybody.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing for me. It was like 4 or 5 months of the normal parliamentary schedule, whatever that means, and then it hit, and it kind of everything changed. But I was still figuring it out at that time, and it's just even all of just setting up a constituency office and setting up an office in Ottawa, and I had just gotten an apartment in Ottawa as well, which was kind of it's a lot to to do, to figure out all those other pieces of your life, and then pandemic hits and kind of everything changed. And I'm fortunate enough that I was able to travel quite a bit because I was driving. So I haven't flown actually since COVID-19 hit. So it takes about 10 hours to drive, and my kids were coming along with me, and they're good little road trippers. But I mean, at some point too, once it became the 14-day quarantining when we were getting home, it was getting a bit more challenging. So we would leave them home or pull them from school after September hit. And so it's just, it's been a challenge. We've been trying, and it has been, it's hard to say a blessing, anytime we're talking about COVID, but it has been nice to be with my children more rather than having to be for those blocks of time in Ottawa. But it's also really hard to kind of turn off the work because it's kind of just happening all around me in my space. That's normally your home space where you don't always bring it with you. So, sometimes it's just like it continues. I could be working late into the evening while taking little breaks here and there to, play Legos or, do what I need to do with my kids. So it's exhausting in a different way. But I am very thankful to certainly be here, especially, again, in New Brunswick, we've been so fortunate with our case numbers and things like that. But I think that self-care piece that you mentioned too, David, is just critical in that. Every now and then I really try to just have some silence. I think that, silence is kind of a rare thing in our world these days. So just to kind of switch from, busy parliament work, official stuff, and then going to family, I just need kind of a moment to kind of take a deep breath, kind of evaluate, maybe debrief some of the things that I just experienced, because we also take really difficult calls from constituents as well. There's really tough conversations that are being had right now. Just so many really, big issues that have only been exacerbated by the pandemic. So it's been tough in that way as well. So just kind of carving out those little silent moments. And if all else fails, I watch The Office. That's my thing. If I can recommend anything to somebody, pop in The Office.
Michael Scott is a hero to many of us. But yeah, I think that's very important. There's that cliche that silence is golden. So sometimes it's okay to be with your thoughts. And I think some people are sometimes afraid of their thoughts, especially right now with everything. But I think that's something, a takeaway that we can all take away and be like, it's okay to just sit and just delve in your silence. Okay, we have a good question here from Emmy in the chat. And the question is, how have you stayed connected with your constituents during COVID? Have you learned any tricks that you may keep post-pandemic? And either one of you can take it.
Sure, I'll go. So I'm getting all these text messages now. People who didn't know I had a son. So yes, we had a son. I think just to back on that question too. We certainly in our lives try to keep personal life as private as you can. So I don't think I've shared a picture of him yet, mostly because we had. It just makes a little bit more sense to us. We had a bit of a scary incident at some point in time earlier on with my daughters, but that was years ago. But so that's essentially why we've done that. But yeah, so that's surprise. I have a 10-month-old son, to those who didn't know. But yeah, great question on what we've learned through the pandemic and certain things that I think will keep. So a lot of I have 2 staff in Ottawa and 2 staff in Edmonton, and the ones in Ottawa I know have been more comfortable working from home. They don't have to come. They actually live in Quebec side, so they don't have to cross the border each time. It just makes them feel a little bit safer, and it's actually worked out quite well. I would say as any employer out there to highly consider allowing that flexible work environment, which before this, we just kind of took it for granted. Every time they would come in, they would we would all just be working from our respective offices. I think in terms of constituents, we've certainly seen, I'd say probably even more and more of the heartbreaking cases of people, either losing their business or mental health suffering. And I think the amount of support that we've been able to get in a faster way has certainly accelerated. I think the certain departments in the government have been a lot more or quicker or faster to act in a lot of ways, and I think the government itself has learned that lesson, but I think also us in the constituency office know those resources now in those urgent situations where somebody is feeling the struggle of mental health a lot more has allowed us to really narrow in on some of that, and I think will last throughout and hopefully post pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very similar for me too. I think before the pandemic hit, we were having town halls in person, so gatherings in many different kind of places throughout the riding, and we would get anywhere from 5 to 30 people that would show up, which is great. You still have a good conversation, and it's still meaningful. But when we have our online webinars, we can have up to 200, 300 people. We had 1,000 for one of them as well. So we're reaching more people through this, because I think people are, less likely to venture out of their houses for many reasons, especially in the winter in New Brunswick. So this has been very helpful, and I think we will definitely continue that kind of online format for town halls. But it has been challenging as well for staff. I have one of my staff is in New York. Her husband's in the American military, so she moved there during COVID. I have another staff in Ottawa, another in Montreal. So it's been complicated, but we've had to learn. And I think again, we're just thankful to have the technology that we have, or else it would be impossible. So there will be some things I'll take with me, but ultimately I need people in real life, and I can't wait to hug everyone again. I noticed my internet is going a little wonky there too. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. We heard all of that. Thank you very
Okay,
much,
good.
Jenica and Matt, for your answers to that. Now, a question from the Q&A. It is someone brought forward for Matt. You said you've been in politics 9 years. Do you think it's impacted your personality in any way? Like, how have you changed or grown as a person? And how are you different before as a politician than you were when you first started?
That's probably a better question for my wife, but I think certainly it really does define you. Like your friends or your colleagues, you when you spend as much time in Ottawa that we normally do, you begin your day at 7, 8 in the morning, and then your day is done 8 or 9, 10 at night, depending on boats. Sometimes you end up spending it with the same people over and over and over and over and over again, and not just within your own party either. There's oftentimes that I know that the Minister of Indigenous Relations last Parliament, the Minister of Immigration and I are all good friends, both Liberals, but we'd often have dinner together, or we would have drinks together to be able to just kind of debrief about certain things. So I think my friend network has really developed around that. I don't know if I have any friends outside of politics anymore. I guess I'll have to find out one day. But no, I think when you get involved at a young age, and not so much even like when 14, like when I first got involved, but when you first run for politics, that's pretty much you put yourself out there for you're defined by in federal politics, your party in a lot of ways of who you are. I think everybody who says they agree 100% with everything of the party they belong to isn't telling you the truth, but you certainly do wear everything that the party that you run for is about. So I think that has reflected some relationships, I would say, but certainly it's completely worthwhile, because the amount of people that you meet and get exposed to, and the amount of experiences that you have in being able to develop public policy, to meeting with ambassadors who have influence around the world. It really is a career like no other, or I guess I shouldn't say a career, a job like no other. And it really is here to inspire people to consider it, because public service is something that is tremendously important, and I wouldn't trade these 9 years for anything. There's been a ton of ups and downs in it, but again, wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just been a tremendous experience to be able to, again, have that ability to influence public policy and the experiences that I've been able to share.
Yeah, thank you for that. And don't worry, you have NIMAC as your friends if you have a shortage. So we've got you on that one. So I guess the next question from the chat is, there's a lot of polarization and divisiveness right now in politics, especially with the recent US election. And this may have disheartened a lot of young people to get involved. What advice would you have for young people who are interested in running for any political position at any level? So I guess, Jenica, we could start with you.
Sure. I mean, my big thing is that there's always more that we align on than we disagree about. So I always try to find where that alignment is. My favorite part about this journey in a lot of ways has been that collaboration piece is getting to meet other people who are, relatively like-minded, and also those who are not like-minded, but finding ways to effectively communicate. And, okay, if we don't agree with this, where can we find a middle ground? Because ultimately, I'm big on the Team Canada approach. I say that all the time, Team 338. We're all there to do a job, and it's to represent our constituents. And so we just have to, again, find ways to make that work. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to agree with everything, but we have to respect each other. And so that's a big piece. And I think if you bring that, to the table, if you're getting involved in politics, you're going to be fine. That should be that moral compass, is just respect. And I mean, watching the United States, we're a little bit better than that. Sometimes question period can get a little a little heated and divisive, but I like to think we're a slightly a little more decorum, I think, is respected in our house. And again, there's always going to be an issue that we're going to be of different minds on, but you just have to find that way to, I don't want to say compromise, because some of these issues are pretty big, and you draw your line, and where you feel you have to best put your line in the sand. But still, we have to get there together, because we have to get legislation that's voted through with a majority of our membership. So it's finding those working relationships, and it is a job of the people. If you like people, then this is where you should be. If you don't like people, if you don't like interacting, maybe choose something else. So I think it's just be hopeful and optimistic that not everybody is as vile as some of the the Trump politicians, if I can say that, but there's a lot of wonderful people in Parliament, far more than anyone that would be there for the wrong reason. So find who they are, learn how to work with them, and you can get work done for Canadians.
If Sharon, I just add to some of that. I think also this being in two parliaments, being in the parliament where there was a majority, and now being in the parliament with a minority, it really has I don't know, taken down some of those walls, if you will, in terms of being able to have those conversations. I think Jenica is exactly right. I think ours, even though if you watch question period, it may appear divisive, I certainly don't think we're even close to where other countries are, particularly our neighbors to the south. And I think that's in large part because we're Canadian, and we love each other regardless. But I do think that it's not one party versus the other party, where it really is down in the US. I think here there's a lot of that cross-party support that we all share. I don't know if many people know this, but we all share a lobby. So before we go into question period, Jenica and her team, and the NDP and the Bloc Québécois and us and the Conservatives and the Independents all share the same working space, and then we're able to connect even there. As we're getting coffee, as we're grabbing a snack or whatever, you have that ability to kind of build those connections before you go into, I guess, what would be a more divisive environment of back and forth of question period. But again, I think it's at that 50-minute period that a lot of people see. But outside of that, it's very collegial, and I've been working a lot, I think, in this minority parliament, seeing a lot more of that.
Thank you for that, Matt. And that's, again, that was a question. You took that question right out of my mouth. I was going to ask, what is life like outside of questioning period? And you've already just answered that. And that's one thing that strikes me. The two parliamentarians that we had last week was the same thing, where they're like, oh, hey, man, how's it going? They were super cordial. And then you and Matt and Jenica, you two know each other, and you're colleagues and cordial friends. So that's really, really encouraging to see. And I have a question for both of you now, because again, as you said, there is the camaraderie, there is the amicability, but you also have different platforms, different policies, different things that you're passionate about. And as you said, Jenica, things get heated, but that's understandable because people are passionate. And there's lines that people will draw, which are good. So I want to ask for both of you, what is one policy, or what's something that you would really like to see enacted during your time as an MP? Jenica, you can start.
The biggest one for me is a guaranteed livable income. That for me is the biggest issue of our time. I think it crosses so many other individual issues. I think of all the phone calls that I get in my riding. I think of meetings with organizations, and I'm talking, health, I'm talking, disability advocates, I'm talking, do you name it? And it all comes back to, that security net that we need in our society to ensure that everyone has that base floor of an income. So I'm really passionate about that one. And I know that's maybe a line that we very much differ on. Oh, that's my husband, Chris. And so, but if I could pick one, wow, would it ever be guaranteed livable income? I just, just on the weekend we had a vigil for École Polytechnique and the women who were lost, and it's a national day of remembrance and action on violence against women, and what came out of that as well is guaranteed livable income. It would uplift so many people who are in precarious situations. I just think that, yeah, that's got to be my number one for sure.
Thank you. Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, so I think for mine, it's hard to pick one, because you get thrown, like, over 9 years, you've been thrown so many different issues, and you just want to like run with them and take the bull by the horn and say, this is the issue that's gonna change. And then the next day another issue will come up, and that's when you want to fight for. But I think underlying of it all is, about 3 years ago, started a men's mental health event on Parliament Hill, really focusing on young men and youth, because we just see a rising suicide rates of young men. And the numbers are high in Alberta, but they're also high, I think we're the highest in Alberta, but it's also high across the country. And for me, that's something that thought, use my voice in elected office to be able to push for that and raise awareness for that. So we had our third annual event this year, and we had a number of Olympians, Peter Mansbridge. We had a bunch of celebrities from HGTV, hockey players, come out and speak about the importance of stamping out that stigma and talking about suicide prevention. And I think it's to see the genesis of the first event that we had to now, to hopefully where it ends, whenever I'm be able to pass it on to somebody else. I'm no longer a member of Parliament. I think maybe it's somebody on this chat can pass it on to one day who becomes a member of Parliament and say, here you go, here's something to continue to keep pushing. Because I think guys, we like to go and say, oh yeah, we don't want to talk about it, or we're told the other guys to tough it up or whatever. And I think that it's a more important conversation, that we get more and more of that out there. And I think it's obviously haven't been able to stamp out the stigma entirely, but I think the more people that are talking about it now, the better. And that would, I guess, if I had to choose one right now, that would be the one I'd choose. But ask me tomorrow, David, and I might choose something else. So we'll see.
No, I think that's very important. The power of conversation is extremely important, and that's an important policy, because the men who end up being brought up by these men who are able to communicate and able to share their emotions are going to be a generation of some strong men. And I guess with that, Matt, I'll ask you a question. I know back eons of years ago when I was in high school, I was a part of a youth council back in Zimbabwe where we would report to the mayor. And I was in the youth council for about 4 years. And I had all these dreams. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become the president by 21. I had all the dreams. Then when I finally got into the council, I managed to do maybe 2 things out of the 10 things that I wanted to do. And I couldn't go for the second term because then I had to come to Canada. But I guess what I learned from that was, don't always have so many ideas, and it's best to hone in on just at least 2 good ideas and shoot for them. So I guess my question for you, being in your 9th year, what mistakes or what did you take from your first term and you've learned, and then in your second term it's a bit different? So just advice for Jenica.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure she'll take my advice, but yeah, no, I love hearing those stories, Sharon. I think those are, eyes light up listening to people at a young age like that getting involved in politics, because I not everybody does. And I think it's a tremendous way to be able to change the world. I often say my wife goes to the hospital and she saves lives every day. Teachers and nurses shape lives every day. Us as politicians, we don't do that every day, but being able to participate in things like today, I think you're able to help hopefully give positive messages or share your story, and hopefully that inspires somebody. So I think your story will inspire lots of people as well. Yeah, you know, I think that from day one till now, you're right. You know, to be able to go and choose every issue. It's one former premier gave me this analogy. He says, in politics, every day you show up to the office and it's like a herd of horses is running out the door, and you try to grab one and hold on to it and hope that that's kind of the one that you push for. When he said he's now a judge here in Alberta, and he says now it's equivalent to maybe a horse walks by once a month, and he's trying to get the attention of the horse. So it's a different different than being in the private sector from what in terms of the number of issues. But I think anybody that says, you know, you can't, you know, you have to choose, you know, one issue or two issues, I think there's certainly, you know, there'd be maybe bite off more than can chew, but I've certainly felt, you know, there's going to be so many people to tell you no in your life in so many different ways, that just being able to find those issues that that you're inspired by, or that you know other people will be inspired by, and run with them. If you make just the smallest little bit of difference, still it's you're making difference in the world. So whereas, you know, there's only 338 of us in Parliament. That's of all the people in Canada, that's 338 that get to make that impact. So, you know, to just stop at one issue or two issues, I think, you know, would do a disservice long term. So even if it's, again, just that little bit, be able to change. So I'd say to Jenica to don't follow my career, but certainly do everything you can, because it's a tremendous opportunity to be there as only 338 people in this country.
If I could just add to that too, thanks so much, Matt. It's you know, it's like so many of the reasons we get involved, I think, because you want to change the world, you want to solve all the problems of the world, and that comes from, you know, activism. I've been on so many protests and demonstration lines, you know, growing up, because there's just so many things that I just felt like I needed to stand up for and do something about, and it can be overwhelming to think, you know, like, how do I solve all of these problems today? And it took a long time for me to kind of realize that I can't do that, but it's important to be well organized and to have, you know, goals. So what I do is I kind of section off a year, and I think, okay, what am I going to achieve in this 3-month time span? What am I going to achieve this in the next 3 months? Like I'm very, that's just kind of my methodology and how I do things, and I've always been that way. But that really helps me stay focused, because otherwise I would be like, you know, like a dog with a squirrel, and just, oh, there's another issue. Oh, I'm going to go over here with this one because I'm a passionate person. So it's been important for me to work on that for sure, and to really hone it in and say, okay, this is the one we're going to target and put all our energy behind. And sometimes some of your biggest accomplishments are things you don't expect. As I mentioned before, kind of life taking you down roads you don't know are there. And I see in the chat, there's a question about, if I'm jumping ahead, sorry, but it's like, what is one of the achievements that you've had that's made a difference? And one that I'm very proud of came in the last couple of months when we were debating Bill C3, which is it was actually Rona Ambrose, so former conservative. She was actually the deputy leader, put forward a bill for judges to have training on sexual assault. So it was brought back to the House. So much support all across party lines. It was this really kind of unifying thing for all of us. But I was able to have an amendment pass during committee stage that requires Indigenous leadership and representatives to be involved in creating the seminars that teach the judges. So it's just this, for me, it's huge to have that be enshrined in Canadian law, like upfront consultation with Indigenous leadership for something so critical. And, you know, I really want to see action on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls as an example. And for me, that was something, it was my way of contributing, even in a small way, but that was just such a big win for my team. And I didn't even know that was something that was going to be possible, you know, a month before that had happened. So just like, you know, stay open-minded, and you know, some of those big achievements may just kind of gravitate towards you, but ultimately it's really about, as I said, kind of staying organized, staying focused, and goal setting is just a really good tool for me.
Thank you for that, Jenica. Thank you for your answer as well, Matt. That's good advice for anyone, let alone a parliamentarian, but anyone wanting to make a difference. And so My final question is going to be a little on the lighter side. And for me personally, I've been involved in sports my whole life. Sports has been my life. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a professional athlete, professional volleyball player. Unfortunately, I stopped growing in grade 9, so that didn't happen for me, which is why I run track. But I want to know, for Matt and Jenica, if you weren't a parliamentarian, what would you be? Or growing up, did you have any other aspirations before switching to becoming or going into politics?
Yeah, it's still impressive. You're a track athlete, David. Yeah, so I think I answered this a similar one this last year, and I said something about Lego, and that was the thing that a lot of people took away, was that I just love Lego, and if I could somehow turn Lego into a professional career, making or building Lego with my kids, and that would certainly be where I'd want to be. Yeah, I think there's I'm from that policy front. I think, that hearing Jenica speak about, some of the chasing your dreams and not, knowing when they're going to kind of be there. I think there's really something to that, because being able to follow those things in the world as they change, and being able to make a difference. Like, look at some of the issues this year alone, like through the pandemic, who would have thought we would have been debating, vaccines in the House of Commons. Being able to go and find those issues and really fight for them, I think is something that inspires me to, continue to be a politician, but also to just make that change in the world. So if there's something that can do that, with also maybe building some Lego on the side, maybe I take that. I don't know, but that certainly would be, I guess, would be more of what I would consider outside of politics.
Awesome. I spy a little picture of Hugh behind you, by the way, I think. So I mean, I love sports too, David, but I'm not probably as skilled as I'd like to think. I play hockey, and I haven't been able to play for about a year. But I would love to have been a professional hockey player. That would be awesome. I play nets, and one of my resolutions was last year was to try to find somewhere to play in Ottawa while we were there. But of course, COVID kicked in. But in all seriousnness, I've always wanted to be a professor. So I mean, I think I would go back to my education roots. But I just kind of love that idea of first year, second year university students, and really being able to shape their journey forward, and all the kind of possibilities that come from that. So and that's still something I could probably do. So that's definitely on the back burner, but I would say I'd love to be a professor.
Oh, a Lego maker and a professor. That's fine. I won't judge any of you. I want to be Beyonce, but I will pass it to Marie for the closing comments. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, everybody. I actually have brought on a couple local agency representatives that I'd like to ask to come on so that they can give thank you from the local perspective. It's been absolutely great to have you guys both on here chatting with the youth moderators. So thank you to David especially, and Sharon, for leading the conversation, for asking such great questions. And I know we had quite a bit of engagement from people on the chat, so that's fantastic. But I'd like to invite Judy Luton, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Fredericton and Oromocto, to say a few words of thanks. And then after that, after Judy, then we'll have Denisha Baluz Shivji, Manager of Development and Communications at Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Edmonton and area. Judy.
Thank you, Marie-Laurent. Hi, everyone. I'm Judy Luton from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Fredericton and Oromocto. And it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to thank Jenica Atwin, my MP of the best riding in Canada, for her engaging delivery today. Jenica, you and I started out with our current jobs about the same time last fall. And I remember attending a function at Government House here in Fredericton, coordinated by the Fredericton Community Foundation, where you spoke. And I was struck then, as much as I am now, most notably by your, well, just with your leadership attributes, most notably your charisma, your communication skills, and your compassion. I believe these attributes are why you are such a highly regarded MP, both locally and on the national stage. Your work on mental health issues on the All-Party Caucus are particularly appreciated by Big Brothers, Big Sisters agencies across Canada, because that's often an issue with many of the youth that we serve. And to quote Kermit the Frog of Sesame Street fame, "It may not be easy being green, but Jenica, you sure make it look easy." Thank you so much for giving us so much insight today, interesting insight in your political journey so far.
Oh, thank you so much, Judy. And it's nice to meet each other again virtually. And wow, I really appreciate your words. That really means so much to me. Thank you so much.
Denisha? Thank you, Judy.
So thank you all for having me here today. On behalf of Liz O'Neill, our Executive Director at our Edmonton agency, I just want to thank my friend Matt Jenner for his remarks today. Liz did ask me to share with you that she so wished she could be here today, and she wants you to know how appreciated you are. I also want to say a quick thank you to David and Sharon for asking some very insightful questions to the panelists. I have to say I learned something new about Matt today, and I was probably one of those people that texted him saying, "What, a 10-month-old?" But I will tell you what I do know about Matt. I've known Matt for about 8 years now, and I can confidently say that he is one of the most hardworking people I have ever met, and someone who cares deeply about his community. Similar to Judy, I live in Calgary now, but my home is always in Edmonton, and Matt has always been my MP or MLA, so that will always stay with me. But his presence at today's town hall is a testament to his hard work and his commitment to community. With all that he's accomplished, particularly with his work on mental health for males and his advocacy for young girls in STEM, you'd find it hard to believe that he's under 40. Matt has been a constant supporter of the work that we do at Big Brothers Big Sisters in Edmonton and across the country. He's attended our events every year, especially when we had in-person events. He visits our sites every summer to meet with the young leaders from Canada Summer Jobs that work with our children and families. And he often reaches out to us to see what more he can do to help support our young people. I've also had the opportunity to meet with him on behalf of the national agency in past years at Youth on the Hill in Ottawa. So thank you, Matt, for taking the time today to share with us your insights around politics in Canada and the impact our young leaders here today can make in their own communities across the country and whatever level they choose to engage with. So thank you.
Thanks, Denisha, and pass on a huge thanks to Liz. Yes, full disclosure, Denisha and I have known each other, I think, my entire political journey, as Liz O'Neill, who's a legend here in Edmonton. So we'll have to get Aisha, and now you can hear Hugh in the background, get them together at some point. But thank you, and David and Sharon, awesome job. Keep up the good work, and hope to see everybody in person sometime soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks to everyone. I just wanted to do a big round of thanks to our panelists, our youth moderators. Thank you guys for being here. For agency representatives, Judy and Denisha, thanks again for being on the call, for participating. This was our second session of the Youth in Office series of dialogues with Youth in Canada and members of Parliament. I just wanted to thank everyone so much for participating. Just before you go, I just wanted to put a point in for our next session, which will be on January 12th, is on standing up for Indigenous youth. We've already received questions from youth on the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the funding gap for Indigenous schools, and on seeking justice and on educating Canadians. Our youth moderators and guest panelists will be announced soon, but please save the date and register online for the next session. Check it out at our website, bigbrothersbigsisters.ca. So thanks everyone so much. It was an honor and a pleasure to chat with you all, and I wish that you have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Great to get to know you all. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.